The idea of meritocracy, which suggests that people achieve success solely through their merits, skills, and effort, sounds fair in theory. However, in practice, it is often considered a lie or an illusion in many societies because it fails to account for the structural inequalities that influence people's opportunities from the start. When the American banker J.P. Morgan, who would become one of the richest men in history, stated at the beginning of the last century that income disparities between the rich and the poor would be inappropriate, he likely could not have imagined that the Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim would one day earn nearly 500,000 times what the average worker in Mexico makes. Nor could he have foreseen that in Mexico's publicly traded companies today, it would be common for income ratios between top executives and average workers to exceed 1,000 times. In other eras, bloody revolutions erupted when the people decided they wanted more bread instead of Marie Antoinette's imaginary cakes or Nero's circus. It seems inconceivable. How can it be explained that today, despite the broad scientific consensus on its social and economic costs, inequality at such levels is tolerated? It turns out that the belief that each person earns what they deserve justifies enormous gaps between high incomes and everyone else. There are systems for allocating income or any socially valuable resource, such as wealth, status, or power, where one deserves what they have because the ruling gods have decided so: theocracy, the caste/class into which one is born, aristocracy, or sheer luck, fortune, as the Romans saw it. In these models, being born rich or very lucky significantly increases one's chances of becoming wealthy. A king becomes one by birthright. As a distributive system, divine right might seem unjust to those who believe in other gods, and luck of birth might be demotivating for those who realize they were born into the wrong home. A meritocracy, on the other hand, would distribute income based on individuals' talent, effort, and dedication, in other words, their merit. Meritocratic ideology distinguishes between factors that are the individual's responsibility and those that are not, positing that particularly talented and/or diligent people should receive a fair financial reward. It is a flattering narrative for high-income earners. Unsurprisingly, then, it is the predominant explanation I found during my studies among Mexican elites. One business participant confirms this perspective of a fair economic system that motivates individuals to compete and constantly improve themselves. He explains that the fact that such a model sanctions an unequal income distribution is not a problem if it ensures a minimum standard of living for the poor. There will always be inequality because people are different, everyone does different things. Markets don't evaluate and compensate all activities equally. There have to be incentives for you to put in more effort than others. It's human nature for there to be inequality. Because one person is smarter than another. Or had more luck. And it's fine for that to exist. What you want is for the very poor not to be starving. This conviction is deeply internalized by Mexican society and its elites. Therefore, dismantling their meritocratic discourse on fair income helps to understand the perpetuation of inequality. Despite a notable awareness of their privilege, one businesswoman represents the majority position among my participants when she states, "Nothing I have in material terms has been given to me." Beyond material wealth, my participants perceive their privilege in terms of capabilities, like being able to do what they want. I don't lack anything, I do what I like to do. For example, a year ago, I said, I'm going to start $1 million nursery. Just now, they sent me these pictures, look. Shows photos. Orchids everywhere. It's just that I do in life what I enjoy. And in that sense, I'm very fortunate because many people don't get to do what they love. Their income, on the other hand, is attributed to their hard work and a natural talent for taking advantage of fortuitous situations. A public sector director from a wealthy family recounts, "I've done whatever I've wanted my entire life. It's cost me an incredible amount of work. I mean, no one has given me anything. Nothing. But I somehow knew how to seize my opportunities, intuitively, naturally." A CEO summarizes his formula for success as effort, work, and education. That's my mantra. That said, while putting in effort can generally improve outcomes, this is not a sufficient criterion for the elites. This is due to two flaws in the meritocratic discourse. First, it is impossible to unequivocally define where personal merit ends and collective merit begins. For example, assuming that the CEOs of major Mexican companies are 1,000 times more motivated or talented than the average worker, should they be individually credited for achieving such results? Should their parents be compensated for instilling these values or passing on their genes? Or would it rather be society's responsibility for fostering traits that help shape their personalities? Ultimately, under the logic of rewarding talent and dedication, who deserves their legacies? It's hard to avoid a certain arbitrariness in deciding the extent to which one is born, made, or shaped into being successful. Furthermore, what a society deems meritorious is itself idiosyncratic. Exceptional talent for caring for the elderly, for instance, may not be rewarded in income the same way as a talent for merging financial institutions. The second problem with meritocratic discourse is empirical. It is not true. In a system that allows inheritances, the accumulation of wealth skews individuals' starting points across generations, distorting equality of opportunity. Despite the widespread belief that income is the result of effort, the amount of effort put in is not proportional to the success achieved. As one government official explains, "I inherited, I deserve it, I worked hard, I put in the effort, all of this helps you justify not sharing, it's mine." But they don't work like I see many people work at a lower socioeconomic level. Having money in your pocket makes everything easier. It allows you to do 1,000 things. For example, being here in this interview during my work hours. My workers can't do that. This is not to say that the rich don't work hard. Undoubtedly, most of them do, just like everyone else. But this does not explain their level of income. Scientific studies confirm that, even with all the effort someone might invest, 74% of people born into poverty in Mexico never escape it. Conversely, with or without effort, those born wealthy not only rarely lose their status but also pass their privilege down to their children. In other words, socioeconomic origins are tightly linked to outcomes. Put simply, being rich is expensive, but it pays off. According to my participants, the key to reversing this lack of mobility lies in education. However, the massive educational expansion of recent decades has not led to greater equality. On the contrary, there has never been as much access to education in Mexico as there is today, yet inequality is above its levels from the 1980s. Referring to the narrative of education as the great equalizer, a CEO inadvertently describes the effect and consequences of one of the mechanisms of intergenerational privilege transmission that perpetuate this situation. I'm privileged because I was able to provide my children with an education. And my grandchildren will be more privileged than my children. That's what I'm betting on. It is not education itself that creates access to privilege, rather, it amplifies it. Despite an unwavering belief in meritocracy, the growing shift of previously public goods into a public-private dichotomy of services massively skews educational opportunities. The accumulation of privilege is taken for granted and rarely factors into the equation of hard work equals economic success. Adding to the unequal nature of the dualistic public-private social system, a stealthy elite within private services creates a hierarchy even within this sector, as described by one participant. It's not the same to go to hospital ABC as it is to go to another lower-tier private hospital. It's not the same to attend ITAM, where I studied, as it is to attend another unrecognized private university. Right from the start, the quality of the professors and the knowledge vary. However, the perceived superiority of expensive private institutions has less to do with the quality of formal instruction within the academic curriculum. What's more essential are seemingly mundane skills that help individuals navigate an elite world. For instance, aspiring lawyers learn about hairstyles and suits appropriate for their status, correct behavior in interview situations, indicators to gauge an interlocutor's socioeconomic level based on their appearance, confident attitudes, rhetorical skills, effective self-promotion, and so forth. In other words, private educational institutions that specifically cater to the elite are everyday spaces that combine meritocratic ideals with classic classist structures. There, attendees meet people with similar ambitions and interests, cultural affinity, and a shared conception of merit naturally exist and/or are created. This ensures that the relationships forged among elite attendees at these institutions are lasting, productive, and reliable. Institutional hierarchies reinforce mutually reinforcing tendencies of physical and socio-cultural separation between the rich and the poor, which manifest in an almost unanimous agreement among my participants. Interaction only happens if the wealthy want it. The poor cannot initiate it because they lack access to private spaces. This is a powerful mechanism of exclusion that allows the wealthy to remain among their peers simply because their spaces do not overlap with other social strata. A director explains how the commodification of public goods and the restriction of social spaces to private spheres extend into housing. Rich people try to separate themselves. The more they can separate themselves and say, "Hey, only wealthy, educated people live here," the better. They wouldn't want a very poor neighbor. It makes them uncomfortable. It is telling that this discomfort arises from having poor neighbors and, therefore, uneducated ones. This is because the lack of social mobility is not attributed to unequal opportunities, but rather to the poor's lack of education, discipline, and effort. In the world of the elite, being educated is considered less vulgar than being rich, though, in essence, both are synonymous with being privileged. The cultural reference pattern derived from these associations is deeply ingrained and predictive of class belonging. It encompasses a set of social, cultural, and economic capitals that situate individuals within a specific social space. For example, a young director explains, "If I liked playing golf, for instance, I'd surround myself with people who can play golf." The resulting socio-cultural segregation generates a profound naturalization of their privileges, leading the privileged to adopt an attitude of deserving what they have. It is a privilege of the privileged to disguise their privileges. Rather than recognizing privilege as a structural push factor, my participants perceive the ability to seize opportunities as an intuitive talent they possess individually. This understanding of unequal opportunities clouds perceptions of existing inequalities. It sharply contrasts with the reality of belonging to a closed group that holds a golden key unlocking cumulative advantages. Access to the codes of privilege outweighs nominally equal qualifications. Far from representing a fair situation of similar opportunities, it tilts the proverbial playing field in favor of those players who are already better equipped. The myth of meritocracy, then, is not only false but also unjust. It justifies systematic income disparities while ignoring the fact that privilege, instead of being randomly distributed across a population, is cumulative. Luck favors the already fortunate. Considering this configuration of merit, meritocracy ends up being the precise mechanism for the dynastic transmission of wealth and privilege from one generation to the next. The insidiousness of this discourse lies in the fact that, as wealth increasingly reflects the distribution of natural talent and the rich intermarry, society becomes divided into two main classes, both accepting that they have, more or less, what they deserve. If Mexico is a meritocracy, the most significant personal achievement that will define your income throughout your life is the timely selection of the household in which you choose to be born. Say hello to Fortuna. Or consider that a fairer, more equal society requires a discussion about privilege and greater redistribution. If you enjoyed this content, give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. See you soon.